and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruber. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Gruber, and we are so excited to have another phenomenal guest. This gentleman is an amazing magician, an incredible entertainer, quite the philosopher. He's one of my favorite people, Hannibal, directly from Los Angeles, and one of our favorite performers at the Magic Castle. Welcome, Hannibal.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So I'm so excited about this conversation because we're not quite, as a lot of them, we're not quite sure where it's going to go. But I wanted to have you, I wanted to have you on because you're an incredible performer, and you have really just created this environment and created this life around yourself that inspires and entertains so many people. So give us an idea of like how you got into magic, and we'll take the conversations from there.
Okay. I got into magic by accident. I was working in 1992, summer of 1992, I was working for a family resort in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was writing scripts and performing live action plays, musicals, and puppet shows for this family resort. My job was to write scripts. I had a partner who wrote music, and we created these shows that would generally run for a week or two. In that interim, I wrote a show that contained a street performer, a hustler, a low-life kind of a dude. And so I went to the public library and I learned a couple of card tricks in order to play that character. Now, the family resort job went away. We literally came in one morning and the gates were locked and the whole place had shut down and never reopened.
Wow.
Never got my last paycheck. And as you might imagine, script writing jobs in Charlotte, North Carolina are scarce. They're smaller. You know?
I thought that was one of the hotbeds of the film industry now.
Until we decided to, North Carolina decided to overtax the people coming in and lost a lot of stuff to Georgia. We were for a while, but alas. So in the discussion I had with my wife at the time, I said, well, I'll look for something else. I'll look for some kind of performance work because I've been a performer since I was 6 years old. Something will come along. In the meantime, I know a couple of card tricks. I wonder if I could actually be a street performer and make that pay off. So I took the props and the table and everything from the play I had written and went uptown in Charlotte, North Carolina. And on day one, I made $87. Just stopping people and showing them the two card tricks that I knew and telling jokes and bantering with them. And I never got another job. I never replaced the job. I did street performing for a very long time and moved that into bars and restaurants. And from that leveraged corporate work and motivational speaking. And then 2 years ago, now I picked up the magic thing in 1993. And then skip ahead. 2 years ago in 2018, I moved to Los Angeles as a newly single man to continue this journey.
And we're very happy you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
I have watched you perform so many times now. You play with the crowd.
I do.
In such a way, it is so beautifully manipulative, and you take them on this, like in the best way, take them on this incredible journey. So what does that do for you as the performer, to getting so into that character and so into that banter with the audience? Where does that take you?
Kathy, it's such a dance, and it's literally. My mother insisted when I was a kid that I learned ballroom dancing and that I learned jazz and tap and stage. That's really how everything got started. And with ballroom dance and with certain types of that kind of like waltzes and tangos and everything else, light touches can change the entire direction of what you're doing. And as the lead of the dance, you decide we're going to do this way, and you can do it with a step or a gentle nudge in this direction. And that's that same back and forth. With the intimacy of a close-up or parlor-sized audience, to where you get a feel of the rhythm of the group that's around you, and you nudge them in the right direction. That's really the best way I can describe it. Is I have a gift of a feeling of, I recognize that you're looking in this direction and this is what you're thinking, and I just try to pull all those elements together, and it's largely unconscious. I've done it for so long, and I'm going to credit that, a lot of that, to street performance, because the crowd changes and it moves and it breathes, and people walk away and new people walk up, and who knows what their day has been, or what and with that, they're not a captive audience.
Mm-hmm.
If they get bored, if they've got something else to do, they can literally, in the middle of whatever you're doing, can just walk away, and they won't if they're engaged. And so I learned early on to engage and start the dance.
Well, it's gonna say, because again, I mean, both of you are performers. I guess I perform in kind of a different way from a corporate perspective, but it's always interesting how, a lot of the big movie, film stars, TV stars end up going back and doing things like Broadway and other live performance stuff. And I've got to imagine, because like as you're talking about it here, I mean, movies are magical to the people watching them, not to the people making them, right? Because they're a pain in the ass. It's like, all right, do that scene again, reset, all this kind of stuff, right?
Back to one.
Yeah, back to one. Here we go. But a live performance, because it's live, like you said, there's that energy, there's that rhythm of the audience at every single night. Even if you're performing the same play, I've got to assume each performance is slightly different.
Oh yeah,
because of the audience, and especially like street performing. That's got to be one of the hardest gigs. It's like stand-up comedy or anything else, where it's like you've got to be a good performer, or else you don't hold the audience, and it just spirals downward pretty quickly.
Good performer, yes, but you've got to make the connection.
Yeah.
You have to be able to connect with the people in front of you. And I'm gonna put you on the spot, Kathy. You've watched me perform how many times? Roughly.
7 or 8.
How many times have you seen me do generally the same tricks?
Well, other than the Halloween show, it's pretty much similar, the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what keeps you coming back watching the same show again?
That's an awesome question. And I have had so many people ask me that about the Magic Castle in general, because they're like, oh my God, how often can you watch the same guys do the same tricks? And I said, well, first of all, it's not the same guys. And second of all, though it's maybe the same illusion or the same sleight of hand or the same trick, it's the way it's done. It's the pattern. It's the story that goes around it. And even if I know how they're done, because I know how most of them are done, to me, it's the knowing how it's done and not seeing them do it, or seeing them do it and go, holy shit, that was so great, the way he palmed that, the way he, it becomes the artistry of it at that point.
Okay.
And the other thing that I really like, especially with you, I like watching the people around me watch the magician.
Right.
So there's been so many times, especially with like Mike Pashota, who I also want to have on the show, or I mean, like that kind of performer, John Armstrong or Handsome Jack, like I will sit back and watch the people in the crowd watch him. Yeah. And there's such an energy about that to me, of people going, oh, or no, holy shit,
You're right. Yeah.
Because as an adult human, when do we get to have that awe and that wonder and that mystery? I know.
So rare. It's so rare. And I contest to you, it only genuinely comes out in live performance. You can be amazed and astonished and entertained by virtual magic or things on screen like this. And that's going to be largely and more explored in the future because of this particular situation.
Yeah.
But live performance is when you get that raw energy and that raw human feeling. And the secret is that's where my show is. Because I watch them all the time. I know. I've seen me enough.
You don't carry a mirror around and watch yourself while you're performing.
Yeah, no, I want to see what's coming this way.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in what this audience is gonna show me this time.
Well, I think it's that awe and wonder, that you kind of talk about, that I think is so fabulous, and why magic is so magical, right? Is because, like you said, as adults, we usually kind of get rid of some of that stuff.
Sure.
It's like we push it aside. And I'll get the quote wrong, but the John Cougar Mellencamp line, when I was a young man, I said, put away those young boy ways. Now that I'm so much older, I wish, I long for those days.
Well, that's a direct reference back to, I don't know the verse, but it's a biblical verse that when I was young, I thought as a young man, I reacted as a young man, and then as I became older, I put away my childish ways, and acted and thought as a man. And I'm like, why?
Yeah. Well,
sure, I have responsibilities, and I take care of responsibilities, and I maintain a certain level of dignity for my age.
Do you?
There we go.
Yeah, I do. Totally do. Yeah. Oh man.
Weird. Something in there. No, I like this one.
I think my favorite.
For anybody just listening to this on audio, they're like, "What the hell are they doing?"
There might be something with
each other off in 48 different languages.
Me too.
But then again, and I want to continue that thought as far as attention and connection, and watching the audience and the visceral return. That's a huge amount of power to have. What are you going to do with it? Now that you've established it, now that you've blossomed this thing, what do you do with it? You have a responsibility, right? Or don't you? And so for me, at a certain point in life, I started talking about things that I just simply believe in. Love, kindness, the use of one's gifts instead of wasting them. And that led me to some very interesting places. It also led me to people telling me that, just do your act and keep your own opinions to yourself. We only came to see card tricks. We don't want to hear what you have to say about anything else.
Which is such a disservice, because you can watch that online.
Absolutely.
Like, you could Google anybody and watch a card trick.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things I love. I mean, I must have seen Mike Pashota 20 times. I mean, like, every time I'm with the cat, he's a performer down in the bar at the Magic Castle.
Yes.
Every time I can see him, I do. It's the same basic tricks. It's the same basic patter. I could probably do his show, except I don't have the dexterity to do any of it. But I love the artistry of it, and I love the philosophy, and I love the audience interaction. Same with you. The times that I've had the privilege of, like, oh, Hannibal's performing, yay, I get to go see you. It's because of that story that you weave. It's because of that performance. And the reason
Mike is a genius.
Oh my God, yes. Everybody I take down there is absolutely blown away.
Absolutely.
And pissed off.
Of course.
You're like,
but again, our styles are very different.
Yeah.
In the way that we approach and handle an audience. I could never do what he does. He's at his own level. He's carved out his own place, and it's perfect, and because it's perfect, he keeps working on it and refining and polishing, and it just gets for me, every time I see it, it's better every time.
Yeah, it really is. So here's why I love this conversation. So Jason and I have talked about magic, about that awe, about that, the magic of life, about embracing that newness and that wonder sort of thing. Mm-hmm. We've also talked about third level listening, which is exactly what you were talking about, of not only knowing how you're feeling, but also what's happening around you and taking the input from the crowd into you.
Yes.
The other thing I love about this conversation is that we can have 20 people doing the same thing, but doing it in such a different way and making it so unique and so your own. And I mean, I do the same basic stress talk every time I go to a stress talk, but I have had people at conferences years in a row come back to see me do it. They know it's not new. They know it's probably going to be the same stories and but it's that performance. It's the way I weave the stories. So for people that think they have to continually reinvent themselves, I mean, yes, you want to keep growing, but I don't think you need to be a different human every single day. I don't know. It's like this sort of double-edged sword kind of thing.
So a few years ago, I had the opportunity to open for Davy Jones from the Monkees. He was doing corporate work at the time. He was traveling around. And we did a tent show on the lawn of a large mansion in the mountains of North Carolina. They hired me to warm the crowd up for Davy Jones. And I certainly did my best. And I got a great connection. But there's this tension feeling in the audience. And a lot of what you do also, when you absorb this in and you have that third level, you can then change the entire mood of the audience by putting it back out in the way that you present it, in the positive way you do it, or the heightening of nerves, if you want to do it that way, or you can move the crowd. Davy came out after Mr. Jones came out after I was done, and just slew. Right, all of that to say, later on that evening, we're back in the dressing room, and he's talking to me about the act. He enjoyed the act that I did. He thought, and he asked me, how many times have you changed what you're doing in your act? I said, well, it evolves. And I put things in and take things out depending on my mood and what I think will work well for the crowd I'm doing. He's like, that's lovely. I've been doing the same 24 songs for the past 40 years. Mm-hmm. He said, I have 3 albums of original material nobody wants to hear. Mm-hmm. And if I leave out Daydream Believer, they're going to riot. So I have to make it unique each night while singing the same words. And I went, I never want to be famous.
Wow. So that's a list of.
But yeah, but it is in a very, very huge sense, the singer and not the song.
Well, stand-up comedy. I mean, it's like I got to the point where I knew every single Jerry Seinfeld shtick. I mean, like I knew how he said it, I knew the facial expression, but you still want to see that over and over and over again because it's hilarious.
He reaches and he connects with something. It's the way you make them feel. Like Maya Angelou said, it's not what you do, it's how you make them feel. And that's what brings people back around.
So what are some of the things that, I mean, we talked about like the, listening kind of to the energy of the crowd, but what are some things, I mean, because again, I love the point that you talked about, with kind of this power comes some responsibility as well, right? As far as, I mean, what are, because I think we can all do this to some extent in our immediate little circle too, right? Is like, we can pick up on energy. We can see kind of what's going on. I mean, how do you kind of do that? And then how do you, again, with this responsibility, try to help move the energy the way that it needs to go? So you change the situation, right?
Yeah. I
mean, because like you said, with that one with Davy Jones, it was a tough crowd kind of to begin with. It was a corporate event, probably. I mean, I've been at a lot of those kind of things. It depends on, you guys were probably later in the evening, so you don't know what the last couple of sessions were or this.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Onto it. You just kind of land into this thing, right?
Well, you mentioned you have kids. Mm-hmm. You can tell their mood without them saying anything, right? Mm-hmm. So in interpersonal relationships, when you get to know someone, or when you get into someone else's vibe, or you establish the relationship with someone, you have the ability, first of all, to recognize at a glance or just from a few words or just the small interaction of exactly where their head's at. And if you take, I don't want to use, it's not taking control, but it's taking the leverage of that and saying, I'm going to respond to the way you're reacting to me with anything. I can do it in a positive way. I can fight back and cause friction. Mm-hmm. You can defuse the entire moment before they even know there is one by the way you present yourself out to them. It's a form of loving manipulation. Mm-hmm. You know what? I'm going to turn your mood into a positive one. And if I can't, that's kind of on you, mm-hmm. But I'm not going to get sucked into a negative reaction with someone or a friction reaction to someone right off the bat, especially if it's someone I care about and I see they're having a bad day. It's okay. What love are you not getting right now? what is it you need? And knowing what our relationship is and how I can interact with you, how can I diffuse that or make your day a better one? Or at least make our interaction that we're about to have a better one based on what I know about you.
Well,
Well,
it's
'cause
like that when I see clients, it's like that in relationship. You know, if I have a client that walks in who's in a state very low on that emotional tone scale, and I want to bring them up, you know, it's like I have a choice of how I handle that. And it's the same thing when I step out in front of an audience to do a talk. You know, it's I've got 100 people, I've got 1,000 people, and I've got to try to reach every single one of them as if they're not sitting in this giant crowd. How do you do that? How do you have that communication, whether it's one-on-one or 1,000 to 1? It's a juggling act because you've got to read that input, process that input, and spit something back out.
Exactly.
So it's and I love that dance metaphor because that's exactly what it is. It is these subtle movements and these subtle changes, and just sometimes that pause where the audience goes, what you know, you get quieter, or you use vocal tone, you all those things we were trained in as a performer. If we can bring that to everyday life, we're going to be more effective communicators, more effective business people, all of that stuff.
Yeah. And you can change attitudes with just the way you're holding yourself, just your expression on your face and the way you react to things.
Yeah, because you're talking about it, I remembered the concept of pace, lead, like from a rapport standpoint. You know, where you kind of you pace once or twice with wherever they're at, and then you make a lead change, right? So again, if somebody's, you know, maybe feeling down, you try to kind of understand and kind of go with them for a little bit, and then you try to move them a little bit up in that area and see if they're going to follow you. If they follow you, then you kind of, you know, again, pace, lead, and eventually you kind of move people up, you know, in where you're going. And Kathy, as you were talking too, you know, about the big groups, you know, because again, as a public speaker also, you know, I've always been taught what you do to one, you do to all. And so, you know, again, it's like, you don't have to go around and give high fives to everybody in the audience, but if you do it to one or two people, everybody else feels like it happened to them. And so I'm sure, again, in your performance art, it's kind of the same way, you know, again, where you're kind of going off of certain individuals as well to try to influence the whole crowd as well.
And the one thing magicians could learn, one of the most important lessons they could learn is exactly that. Because if you are belittling one person, if you're making one person the brunt of the joke that you're telling, or being skeezy, or being, you know, inappropriately flirting, or whatever, you know, whatever level that comes off of, you're making everybody else in the room uncomfortable, or making them feel like, you know, you're doing it to me as well as you're doing it to this person.
Yeah. So
why would you do that?
And I've seen that. I've seen a magician start to bomb a little bit and get uncomfortable and start actually making almost personal insults to one person, whether commenting on their physicality or commenting on, you know, and you could see the entire group does not think that's funny.
No.
They turn on them quickly because it's a very personal dig, not even in character. Or no, I mean, there's one magician who I can't think of who it is, but he asks for a dollar bill and he tears it up and then he goes, "I'm just a dick," and puts that teared up dollar bill in his pocket. He was never going to restore it. And I actually find it hilarious because he does it in character in such a way that it kind of fit. And you're like, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, and that's just the theme throughout is he's just sort of but he does it so friendly, like, that you don't go, whoa, it's funny. Like, oh, he just kind of played us all, you know? It's the delivery.
Did you ever see Harry Anderson work?
No, not in person.
Okay. Harry would come out and he had this style. It was kind of an easygoing, laid back, never leaning in your face, but always just kind of, you know, and he would play with a few people and he would, you know, that's did you get a free bowl of soup when you bought the tie? That's nice. It's very, you know. So he would, and then he'd pick out one person and he'd just be a total jerk to this one person. Light-handed. And eventually he gets into his show and he goes over and he's like, hey, give me a $5 bill. And they'd pull it out and he'd tear it in half and he'd go, where have you been? I've been a jerk to this guy over here all night long. I insulted that guy's tie. I've been a jerk to everybody in the room, and I say, give me a five. I didn't even say please. And where were you brought up? You know, and it was just that kind of thing. It just caught you so. Yeah, why would I do that?
Right. Yeah. And
but he's just so disarming. It brought that out. So you can. One of the lessons he taught me personally was like, if you want something from someone, just, you know, in an audience especially, you ask them for it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. I mean, just in life, what do you need? And Jason and I we've had that conversation so much. People say that they're not getting what they want, but they don't actually know what they want. And that's my first coaching session with people is what do you want? Like,
what do you want?
You don't just turn on Waze and go, take me somewhere. You know, you have to program in a destination, and then you have to ask for it, and then you have to get there. And of course, we've blown through another half an hour.
Well, I was going to say, because with that, you know, when you said that, Kathy, because that's, you know, one of the common coaching questions is people already know what they want, right? So you say, you know, what do you want? And they say, I don't know what I want. And so the rebuttal is, if you knew what it was, what would it be?
Yeah.
And that is an amazing question, because all of a sudden people kind of sit up and they go, oh, it's this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you knew the whole time. It's just, you know, we were kind of blocking it and not putting it in there. No.
Yeah, I like to say, when people say, I don't know, I say, yes, you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they always, maybe it's the third time I say that. Well, I don't know. Yes, you do. Well, I don't know. Yes, you do. Well, it's probably, and then they have an answer. You know, it just takes a little bit of.
There's a lot of fear in standing up and just saying what it is you want.
Yes.
There's a ton of people that just live in fear of just acknowledging what it is they really truly want out of something.
Have we done an episode on fear yet?
Is
on fear?
Big life change. and is afraid to say what she wants, you know, out of the life she's got. So she's struggling with that.
Yeah. Fear is huge. All right. So Hannibal, any final thoughts? And then how can people reach you, to book you, to contact you, to all that good stuff?
Stay home, wash your hands.
Yeah, seriously.
If you, the question that I get most from magicians that, you know, Kathy, I'm successful at what I do. And I'm not successful because I make a lot of money. I'm not successful because I'm famous as a magician. I guess I have a certain level of recognition among my peers. I'm nominated for 2 awards this year. I was nominated for Close-Up Magician of the Year and Parlor Magician of the Year. I don't know how that happened. My first advice to any magician coming up, I'm successful because I do what I love and I reach people and we dance together. Have a kick-ass show. That's the only thing you have to do. As far as getting along in life, listen when somebody's talking to you and respond with kindness. That's it in a nutshell for me right now. 54 days without performing. Nobody sent me a chip or anything.
You don't get a keychain after day 30.
It's just something, I don't know what I got. It's I've been in this room now for 54 days and not in front of an audience at all. It's very tough for someone like me. If you want to get in touch with me, my website is themagicartist.com. Themagicartist.com. If you feel like supporting my art, my Patreon, which I have a nice little following of people who support me in minimal ways, you know, which is nice. It keeps food in my refrigerator until California decides they can help. Is Patreon handle is Magic Artist. That's kind of it. I mean, I don't have any up and coming shows.
Well, you will. We'll all get back to that.
If anyone is looking for a consultation on particular magic effects they're trying to do via Zoom or whatever, I'm available for that, and that is on a strictly donation-based whatever. If I can help you, I'll help you. I'll watch your video and tell you what I see are the strengths and weaknesses of your performance. Other than that, I have a whole ton of new material that I have been working on for 54 days that I get to unleash as soon as the world stops coming to an end.
Yay. Because as soon as the world recharges itself, that's awesome. I'm so happy we had you on. This is a lovely conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Yay. I love my friends. Okay. I'm Kathy
I hope I
Gruber.
gave you some quality things. I hope.
Oh, you so
Oh,
did.
yeah.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I'm Kathy Gruber. I can be reached at kathygruber.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out. You know, I love that. You know, listen to people and respond with kindness. And if we do that, it's going to be a great week for you. So go out, have a great week, and we'll catch you on a future episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.
Yeah.